On the morning of August 12, 1843, a piercing scream shattered the stillness of Willowbrook Plantation in South Carolina's Low Country. What Katherine Harrow discovered in her husband's private quarters that day sparked a scandal so shocking that newspapers refused to print the full details for nearly 60 years. Within 3 days, more than 300 people gathered in Beaufort's town square to witness a punishment so terrible that many carried the memory to their graves. The county locked away every record until 1923, and when historians finally studied them, they found that the truth was far darker than any rumor. This was not simply a case of betrayal, it was the total destruction of a man's life, planned by the one person who knew exactly how to turn a community's anger into a weapon. Before we continue with the story of Willowbrook Plantation and the scandal that destroyed the Harrow family, pause for a moment. If this story already sends a chill down your spine, take a second to subscribe. We uncover the darkest true stories from America's past, tales that were deliberately erased from history. Tell us where you're listening from. Maybe you're not far from where this nightmare took place. Subscribe now, because what comes next is even more disturbing. Now let's go back to 1843, a time when reputation meant everything, and losing it could destroy your entire life. Beaufort, South Carolina, in the early 1840s, was a land full of contradictions. Spanish moss hung from ancient oak trees like ghostly veils, both beautiful and haunting. The air carried the scent of salt marsh and magnolia, sweet but masking the smell of decay underneath. It was a place where fortunes grew from the labor of enslaved people, and where white-columned mansions stood as symbols of pride and power. The Harrow family stood at the very top of that world. Edmund Harrow, 35 years old in 1843, had inherited Willowbrook Plantation 7 years earlier, 3,000 acres of rich land and a grand Greek revival mansion, completed in 1838. It had chandeliers from France and smooth-heart pine floors joined so perfectly that no seams could be seen. Edmund fit every image of a Southern gentleman, tall, dark-haired, broad-shouldered from years of horseback riding, always neatly dressed, speaking with quiet confidence. He served on the town council and as a church deacon. People called him a fair master, which in that time meant only that he whipped his slaves less than others did. Yet Edmund Harrow hid a secret that would destroy everything. Katherine Harrow, born Katherine Peyton, married Edmund in 1837. She came from a Charleston family whose wealth rivaled the Harrows. Their marriage was arranged, as many were, to strengthen both families' power. She was the image of beauty in that society, pale skin kept from the sun, dark hair always pinned perfectly, a slim waist tightened by corsets. Educated at Charleston's best academy, she learned French, piano, and painting, as well as the unspoken art of appearing graceful while managing a household. Their wedding at St. Michael's Church had been the event of the year, attended by hundreds. Everyone said they were the perfect couple whose children would carry on both families' legacies. But 6 years into their marriage, there were still no children. Whispers spread through drawing rooms, some pitying, some cruel, about the wife who failed her duty. Katherine felt every look, every quiet remark. Her mother-in-law's polite but cold disappointment stung deeply. Each childless year made her feel smaller, worth less. What she didn't yet understand was why she could not conceive, why her husband rarely visited her, and why his eyes seemed always fixed on something far away. The answer lay behind the main house, in the quarters. There were 3 names: Marcus, Samuel, and Daniel. Marcus, 24, was the son of the plantation's head cook. His skin was lighter, his features suggesting mixed ancestry people avoided discussing. He had worked in the main house since he was 15. first as a footman and later as Edmund's valet. Smart, quiet, and observant, Marcus seemed to anticipate needs before they were spoken. Samuel, 26, worked in the stables. Dark-skinned and powerfully built, his hands were skilled in tending horses and repairing tack. Though enslaved, he carried a quiet strength that even bondage couldn't break. Edmund noticed him 3 years earlier and began finding excuses to spend more time in the stables. Daniel, 21, was a carpenter. Slender and soft-spoken, his delicate hands could turn wood into art. He rarely spoke, knowing that invisibility was safety. Edmund met them one by one, never together, always late at night, in the East Wing, a part of the house supposedly under renovation and closed to others. That hidden room had its own garden entrance, a comfortable bed, heavy curtains, and soft lamplight. For 3 years, this secret arrangement continued. By day, Edmund played the role of the perfect husband, neighbor, and churchman. By night, while Katherine slept alone in her separate room, he crossed the dark garden to the East Wing where one or more of the 3 men waited. These men had no choice. They were property. When called, they obeyed. Their emotions, fear, shame, or silent endurance, meant nothing. Refusal meant punishment, sale, or separation from family. So they obeyed and stayed silent, telling themselves they were at least safer than those in the fields. But secrets never stay buried forever. In a house full of eyes and whispers, in a world where jealousy and fear lived side by side, something this dark could not stay hidden for long. Katherine began to notice small things. Edmund always locked the East Wing. Some mornings, he seemed strangely cheerful. Marcus avoided her gaze. Samuel wandered near the garden long after dark. Daniel had faint bruises on his neck. She tried to dismiss the signs. The truth was too terrible to consider. But as the evidence grew, denial gave way to realization. On the night of August 11, 1843, Katherine decided to see for herself. She waited until the house was still, then followed her husband through the garden to the East Wing. The door was slightly open, and faint light spilled out. She looked through the gap, and what she saw broke her world apart. Her husband, the respected gentleman, was there with the 3 enslaved men. The sight froze her. What she witnessed was forbidden, punishable by death under the laws of that time, not only for Edmund but for Marcus, Samuel, and Daniel. Katherine's body trembled. Her breath caught in her throat. She saw tenderness, laughter, things she had never shared with him. Rage replaced her shock. This was more than betrayal. It was humiliation, a life built on lies. She went back to her room, calm but cold. She lit a candle and wrote 3 letters, one to Edmund's mother, one to the sheriff, and one to her husband. In each, she told exactly what she had seen. When finished, she sealed them and slid Edmund's letter under his door before returning to bed, waiting for dawn. At first light, Edmund found it. He read it once, then again, his face draining of color. Panic rose, followed by despair. There was no escape. When he knocked on her door, she refused to let him in. Her voice was calm. "The letters are sent. The sheriff will be here soon. You should pray. You will find no peace in this world now." By 7 o'clock, the sheriff arrived with 2 deputies. Katherine, composed and pale, told her story plainly. The sheriff, an older man who had long known the family, grew grim as he listened. He followed her to the East Wing, where evidence of the night's events lay in plain sight. His jaw tightened. "This will shake the whole county," he said quietly. Edmund was arrested without a fight. The 3 men were taken from their quarters in chains as their families watched in stunned silence. By noon, the entire town knew. By evening, the story had spread across every porch and parlor. A man of standing, a church deacon, a landowner, exposed in the most forbidden act imaginable. The shock consumed the community, and within days, the trial began. They had dealt with theft, murder, drunken fights, and scandals before, but nothing like this had ever reached the courthouse. This case touched something deeper, something about order, pride, and the rules that kept their world steady. The judge assigned to it was an old man, a strict reader of the law who had spent his life keeping peace in the county. He knew the family well, had signed their property papers, and seen the couple at gatherings many times. When he read the charges and the witness accounts, his face grew hard. The law was clear. This kind of offense carried the harshest punishment possible. The statutes named it in blunt language, offering death or whatever the court might choose in its place. Though the code left little room for kindness, the judge still felt the weight of the moment. One of the accused was a white man from one of the founding families, people of wealth and power who had shaped the town's story. The others were enslaved men, considered property, voiceless and powerless. The law pretended equality, but everyone knew better. The judge called a private meeting with the sheriff, the county prosecutor, and 3 respected men of the community. These men held wealth, office, and influence. The wife was not invited, nor was anyone there to speak for the accused. "Gentlemen," the judge began slowly, "this matter demands both justice and caution. The evidence is strong. Were it any other man, we would move swiftly, but this case is not ordinary." The mayor shifted uneasily. The family was important, he reminded them. Their money and reputation were tied to the town's success. The prosecutor rubbed his chin, silent. The question none dared say aloud hung in the room. How to apply the law when doing so might tear apart their own circle of power. The judge believed in justice, but also knew how fragile peace could be. In the end, they agreed that the case would go forward and that the trial would be public. If the law meant anything, it had to apply to everyone. Hiding it would only invite more secret sins. Treating the family with special care would show that some people stood above justice. When the news spread, the county seemed to move differently. Some whispered that the family would find a way to twist the outcome. Others argued that the law must be followed exactly. The household itself became a stage of tension. Ordinary conversations turned sharp. Neighbors spoke in lowered voices, glancing at one another with suspicion. The woman who had spoken out felt the town's gaze fall heavy upon her. For her, revealing the truth was both anger and survival. She knew it could destroy her husband, but also free her from the prison of silence. She understood the cost, but she could no longer bear the weight of secrets. Meanwhile, the 3 enslaved men sat alone in their cells, trying to make sense of what had happened. Their families feared the worst, because they knew that in this place, men with dark skin rarely survived such accusations. The law and custom offered them no protection. In the marketplace and at church, people debated what justice really meant and whether the town's leaders could deliver it fairly. The tension grew quietly, spreading like heat before a storm. When the trial day came, the courthouse yard filled with faces, some angry, some frightened, some eager to see the rules enforced. The trial was a slow, public unraveling of a private sin. Witnesses spoke, evidence was read. The defense stumbled in a court where reputation weighed as much as law. The judge's duty to the code allowed little mercy. The law's machinery moved as written. The guilty would be punished, and order restored for all to see. For the woman, there was no joy in victory. She had unleashed ruin, but also told the truth. She returned home quiet, carrying both relief and guilt. She would live on as the wronged wife, knowing she had done what she thought was right. The rest would face consequences too severe to forget. The county would remember this trial for generations. The community had grown under his influence. His plantation employed hundreds, shaping the local economy. If he were executed, what would happen to his property, to the enslaved people, to the debts owed in every direction? The prosecutor, a thin man with wire glasses, shook his head. "With all due respect, Mayor, justice cannot bend for wealth or family name. If we treat him differently from a poor man, we destroy the law itself. Crime remains crime, no matter who commits it." The sheriff nodded. "I have him in my jail with 3 enslaved men. If anyone escapes justice, what message do we send? That the rich are above the law?" The Reverend spoke next, his voice steady and heavy with faith. "This is not only legal, it is moral. The act is a sin that defies God's order. If we show mercy, we teach that such sin can be excused. We cannot allow that." The judge folded his hands. "Then I propose this. We will hold a fair trial. Conviction is certain. He will not die, but he will wish for death. His punishment will be public, and his shame complete." The men stared. The prosecutor asked carefully, "What do you mean, Your Honor?" The judge's eyes were cold. "He will spend 3 days in the pillory, in the center of town. Each day, he will be whipped 20 times under the sun. His reputation, his dignity, everything he once was, will be stripped away before all. The town must see what becomes of such men." Silence filled the room. Even those who wanted harsh justice were shocked. "And the slaves?" the Reverend asked quietly. "They will hang," the judge replied flatly. "They are property that defied their master's station. They will serve as a warning to others." The sheriff objected. "That's not right, Your Honor. He forced them. They had no choice." The judge's voice stayed calm. "Justice and necessity rarely agree. The law demands punishment for all involved. To maintain order, some must pay." Reluctantly, the men nodded. It was not justice, it was control. But the judge had not expected Katherine Harve. Word of the plan reached her through gossip and family ties. When she learned it, she felt no peace. She wanted her husband ruined, yes, but she had not wanted Marcus, Samuel, and Daniel to die. They were trapped men, victims too. Executing them seemed wrong, even in a cruel world. But she also realized something else. If they died first, her husband might become a martyr. People might pity him. She could not let that happen. She requested a meeting with the judge. They met 2 days before the trial. Katherine arrived dressed in black mourning clothes, though no one had died. She sat perfectly still, voice calm. "Your Honor, I know of your decision. I don't question it. But I ask one change. Let all 4 men face their punishment together. Let my husband see the end he caused." The judge studied her. "That is a merciless request, Mrs. Harve." "My husband showed no mercy to me or to God's laws," she replied. "Let him witness what his sin brings." After a pause, the judge nodded. "Your request is granted." The trial began August 18th, 1843. The courtroom was overflowing. People filled aisles and windows just to hear. Edmund was brought in shackled, looking hollow and defeated. Marcus, Samuel, and Daniel followed in chains. Marcus seemed calm. Samuel burned with quiet fury. Daniel trembled, crying silently. Katherine took the stand, hand on the Bible, her voice steady as she told everything. Every word cut through the room like a blade. When she finished, silence hung heavy. The defense tried to suggest insanity, but her replies crushed the argument. Edmund refused to speak. The 3 men were never given the chance. The jury needed less than 10 minutes. The verdict was clear. Guilty. The slaves, too, were found guilty. Their fate sealed the moment the trial began. Judge Middleton stood. "Edmund Hargrove, death would be too easy. You will face 3 days of public punishment. Each day you will stand in the pillory and receive 20 lashes. You will carry the marks forever. You will also watch the hanging of the 3 men your sin destroyed." The courtroom gasped. The 3 men heard their sentence without resistance. Daniel collapsed, Samuel clenched his fists, and Marcus looked at Edmund, not with hate, but pity. The gavel struck. Court is adjourned. May God have mercy on all your souls." The room erupted. Some said justice was done, others called it cruelty. Still, the crowd prepared for the spectacle. Morning came. The sun rose bright over Beaufort as people gathered in the square. Chairs were arranged for the town's leaders. Others stood shoulder to shoulder, whispering. In the center stood the pillory and the whipping post, newly painted as if to mark the day. At dawn, Edmund was brought out bare-chested, his feet unshod, his hands tied. Deputies locked him into the pillory, his head and hands trapped, his body bent forward under the rising sun. The heat grew quickly. Within an hour, Edmund was drenched in sweat. After 2 hours, flies had already found him. By the third, his back burned under the hot sun. His legs shook from holding the same position, and the crowd watched with mixed emotions. Some mocked him, shouting cruel words. Others simply stared. A few felt pity but kept quiet, afraid that showing compassion for someone condemned might bring suspicion upon them too. Katherine arrived late in the morning, accompanied by 2 female relatives from Charleston who came to support her. She stood at a careful distance from the pillory, far enough that she didn't need to speak, but close enough for Edmund to see her if he raised his eyes. She wanted him to know she was there, watching his humiliation to the end. Marcus, Samuel, and Daniel had been brought from the jail, chained together under guard. They stood at the edge of the square, forced to witness Edmund's punishment. Marcus's face showed nothing. Samuel looked on with grim satisfaction, pleased to see the man who had used him now being broken. Daniel couldn't bear to watch and kept his gaze fixed on the ground. At noon, the real pain began. Sheriff Denore approached with a long leather whip, and the noise of the crowd faded into silence. Every eye turned toward the pillory. "Edmund Hargrove," the sheriff called loudly, "you are sentenced to 20 lashes. Let this serve as a warning to all who might follow your example." Edmund tried to steady himself. He had been whipped once as a child, but that was nothing compared to what awaited him now. The first strike came suddenly. The whip cracked across his bare back, leaving a red mark. He gasped, but did not cry out. The next lash followed fast, and then another. By the 5th, he groaned through the pain. By the 10th, he screamed. By the 15th, he was sobbing uncontrollably. His back was torn, blood soaking into his clothes. When the 20th lash fell, he slumped forward, held up only by the wooden frame. The excitement of the crowd faded into uneasy quiet. Sheriff Denore coiled the whip and stepped back. Edmund remained in the pillory until sunset, exposed to the heat, the flies, and the shame. He drifted in and out of awareness as the day dragged on. People came and went, some to stare, others to pretend not to care. When the sun finally touched the horizon, the sheriff returned. The pillory was unlocked, and Edmund collapsed instantly. Deputies dragged him to the jail, where a doctor waited to make sure he would live long enough to face the next 2 days. The second day began the same way. Edmund was dragged out at dawn, locked again in the pillory, left to suffer in the sun. His back was covered in scabs from the day before, but each movement tore the wounds open again. Katherine came once more, dressed in black, her face shaded by a parasol, expression unreadable. The crowd whispered, calling her heartless, but also saying she had every reason for her anger. Few could imagine what she had endured. At noon, the whipping started again. 20 lashes across his already wounded back. This time, Edmund screamed from the first blow. He had no strength left to hide his pain. He begged for mercy, but none was given. When it was over, his back was raw and bleeding. The doctor said it was a miracle he survived, though some thought it might have been better if he hadn't. On the third day, Edmund was barely able to stand. He was brought again to the pillory for the final time. His back was wrapped in bloody bandages, his face swollen and pale. The law demanded the punishment be completed. The square was more crowded than ever. People came from nearby towns to witness the end of Edmund Hargrove's suffering and the execution of the three men. Deputies kept the crowd back from the gallows that had been built overnight, where 3 ropes hung from a crossbeam, placed so Edmund could see everything. Katherine wanted him to watch. The last 20 lashes came at noon. Edmund did not scream this time. His body flinched with each strike, but he had passed beyond pain. Blood ran freely down his back. When it ended, he hung limp, still conscious only because the doctor had been told to keep him awake for what was next. At 2 o'clock, Marcus, Samuel, and Daniel were brought to the gallows, chains rattling as they walked. The crowd fell silent. The Reverend stood ready with his Bible offering prayers, but Daniel cut him off. "Save your prayers, Reverend," he said firmly. "We don't need them. If a God watches this and does nothing, that God is no God at all." The Reverend called him a blasphemer, but Daniel only answered, "I speak truth, something few here dare to do." Samuel followed, speaking clearly to the crowd. "You call us criminals, but we had no choice. We obeyed because we had to survive, and now we die so you can feel righteous. Remember that." Marcus said nothing, only looking at Edmund, who met his gaze for a moment. There was silent understanding between them, a shared recognition of the horror that had bound them. The hangman, John Kelly, adjusted each noose carefully, then stepped back and waited for Judge Middleton's signal. The judge checked his watch and nodded. The lever was pulled. The trapdoors opened, ropes tightened, and the 3 men died instantly. Their bodies swayed in the afternoon air. That was the only mercy they received. Edmund watched it all, and something inside him shattered. He cried out, a broken, haunting sound that echoed across the square, a cry of guilt and sorrow that no one who heard would ever forget. Their bodies hung for an hour before being taken down and buried in unmarked graves. When Edmund was finally released from the pillory, he collapsed again. The doctor confirmed he would live, but his spirit was destroyed. That evening, Judge Middleton came to his cell. "You've served your sentence," he said coldly. "You are free, but not welcome here. Leave Beaufort, leave South Carolina, go anywhere else, and pray no one ever learns your name." Edmund said nothing. His life was over. He was a ghost of the man he had been. 3 days later, still weak but able to walk, Edmund left Beaufort. He had only the clothes on his back and a small sum of money from the sale of his belongings. Willowbrook Plantation was sold to pay debts. The enslaved people, including Marcus's wife Rachel, were sold to different buyers. The house was renamed, erasing every trace of the Hargrove family. Edmund vanished from history. Some said he went west, others that he died soon after. None knew for sure. Katherine returned to Charleston, reclaiming her maiden name, Peyton. She told everyone her husband was dead. In a sense, he was. Her family welcomed her back with sympathy. She lived quietly, respected but changed, her eyes colder, her heart harder. She had destroyed her husband and lost part of herself doing it. Years passed. The scandal faded into a dark legend whispered among locals. But in 1897, a historian named Thomas Bradford uncovered the sealed records while researching antebellum South Carolina. He studied the trial notes, Katherine's testimony, medical reports, and sale documents. What he found shocked him. Not just the cruelty of it all, but the way society had normalized it. Bradford published his findings, but few paid attention. The truth didn't fit the romantic story of the Old South. By 1923, the case was considered a curiosity. A local newspaper wrote briefly about it, noting Katherine Peyton's peaceful death and that descendants of Marcus, Samuel, and Daniel still lived nearby, unaware of their ancestors' suffering. The article ended by saying it was a different time. But was it really? In 2015, a small historical society finally erected a marker at the site of the old gallows. It mentioned the 3 enslaved men who had been executed unjustly, calling it a tragedy. It said nothing about Edmund, Katherine, or the lashings. That part of history was too uncomfortable to face. Edmund was both a victim and a perpetrator, cruel in his power, destroyed by his society. Katherine, too, was both victim and avenger. Marcus, Samuel, and Daniel were the true victims, killed to protect a cruel social order. The crowd that had gathered believed they were righteous, but were they? Or were they simply ordinary people taught that cruelty was justice? History gives no easy answers. What happened in Beaufort was not a mistake. It was the system working as it was meant to. The story disturbs because it shows how easily compassion disappears when cruelty is called justice, and how quickly people will destroy others just to feel safe themselves.